Thank you for speaking to us. I'd like to begin by asking you, any country that has gone through a lot of trauma at the time of creation, it needs a kind of a closure. And Bangladesh never seemed to have got that. Do you think that this war crimes trial which is going on, that is going to give Bangladesh the closure that it desperately needs?
Well, I would first of all like to suggest that the closure is very necessary. And that is what the war crimes trials are intended to give. Whether or not they will succeed is now becoming more and more a moot question as this particular government approaches the end of its tenure. Because I would suggest that this is the last opportunity Bangladesh will have to secure that closure, because if they do not end these trials before the next elections and another government formed by the BNP Jamaat comes into power, they will ensure that this history is now finally wiped out and that no one will ever be able to bring the guilty to justice in future.
An obvious question was, why did it take so long for it to happen? Why did it take? I mean, what were the impediments that?
Precisely because the very forces who colluded or collaborated with the war crimes came to the center stage of power. It is the occasions on which the Awami League was in power, it was never strong enough. It was never able to fully dominate the politics and the environment in Bangladesh. Two factors are here. The Jamaat Islami BNP combine is basically sympathetic to the collaborators, or is headed by the collaborators themselves, as is the case with the Jamaat Islami, and has at least some of the collaborators as members, as is the case with the BNP. Number two, for many years the Pakistani intelligence services and the army had managed to restore their influence in the Bangladesh intelligence services and the army. So Pakistan and Bangladesh were sort of operating in tandem, and that is why you saw this great resurgence, so to speak, of Islamist extremist terrorism in Bangladesh and outwardly directed into India from Bangladesh through the 2000s. This combine effectively not only prevented any action being taken against the guilty, but I think more importantly suppressed the history of the war crimes. If you see the curricula that have been defined in the schools in Bangladesh, you see that the freedom struggle has very little reference to the atrocities, to the war crime, to the genocidal campaigns that were carried out in 1971. And this has been a deliberate effort by these parties who were colluders, who were collaborators, to wipe out this phase of history so that they are able to consolidate their power and bring back the same kind of politics of Islamism, of a right extremist kind of thinking into the Bangladesh environment.
You talked about Pakistan. The obvious question is that the Pakistani generals are going to be kept away from this. Why did that happen, and is it fair?
Well, obviously it isn't fair. Obviously Pakistan will never be brought to book for what it actually did, and it was the architect of the genocide. Now, Bangladesh is too weak a country to sort of even secure effective international action against those who were responsible from the Pakistani side. The best it can do, and the best it can even hope for, is to bring the guilty on its own soil to book. And even in that, I think they have embarked on a very, very uncertain gamble, because even within Bangladesh, the forces who today are supportive of the collaborators are a very, very strong political force. And Sheikh Hasina and the Awami League's gamble could very well result in its own, I would say, in a tremendous amount of political violence against these formations.
You're using a very strong term. You're saying Sheikh Hasina it's a gamble for her. And it is a precarious situation that she is in, and if she's going in for a gamble, do you think that she could lose, and this trial is something that she could just withdraw the support that she's giving this trial, and it could all fall through?
She will not withdraw the support. She is fully committed The Awami League and the groups connected with the freedom struggle are completely committed to this. But the gamble is whether or not they are able to complete the processes and bring the guilty to book before the next election. Because what we are seeing is another storm gathering. You see, one thing that you need to understand is the popular psyche in Bangladesh today. As a result of a very successful campaign over all these decades in trying to wipe out the memory of the war crimes, what you have is a younger generation, at least, people who were born not very much before the freedom struggle, or people who were born afterwards. So people who are in their 30s and their 40s, who have almost no sense of the enormity of what was done in 1971. The result is the BNP Jamaat-e-Islami, among their own support base and among fence-sitters and the undecided, have been able to project the entire war crimes trial as a show trial, as an effort to politically marginalize or damage the BNP Jamaat by the Awami League. So it's a partisan affair. It's not a real quest for justice. Now this would appear absurd to anyone who actually has a memory of 1971. But it is not so absurd to a people who do not have a memory and whose the histories they have been taught have deliberately eliminated